Okay, picture this. You're in an operating room. The lights are bright, everything is calm, a routine surgery is happening. But then, all of a sudden, the alarms start blaring. The patient's vitals are crashing, and they're crashing fast. Every single second counts.
Now, when you imagine that chaos, who's the first person you think of calling the shots? Yeah, for most of us, it's the surgeon, right? But today, we're going to pull back the curtain and focus on two members of that team who are absolutely critical, but, well, they're often overlooked.
We're talking about the instrument and circulating nurses. You can think of them as the guardians of the operating room. Their roles are just pivotal to making sure the patient is safe through every single moment of a surgery. So, what exactly do they do? Well, they're managing the entire sterile field, they're anticipating what the surgeon needs before they even ask for it, and they're constantly scanning the entire environment for any hint of a problem. They're basically the eyes and ears of the whole team. You might even call them the surgical conscience in the room.
Okay, so these nurses are obviously essential. You would think we'd have a really deep understanding of what they go through, right? Especially during those insane high-pressure emergencies. But what the research actually shows us is a massive and honestly kind of shocking blind spot.
To try and figure out what we actually do know, a group of researchers went on a deep dive. They started by pulling together every study they could find that seemed relevant, and they ended up with over 1,300 records. That's a pretty big number to start with.
After they weeded out all the duplicates, they still had over 1,200 articles to sift through. And they were looking for something really specific. Any study that dug into the personal experiences of these nurses during an emergency in the middle of a surgery. So after going through all 1,200 of those articles, how many do you think actually hit the mark? How many focused on what these nurses go through in a crisis? 3. That's it, just 3. This number alone just screams that we have a huge gap in our understanding here.
So, what can we possibly learn from such a tiny handful of studies? Well, it turns out quite a bit. Even with that limited data, 3 really clear themes popped up, and they give us this crucial peek into how these nurses manage to navigate a full-blown crisis.
So the analysis really breaks their experience down into 3 main buckets. First, how do they actually manage the emergency in the heat of the moment? Second, what kind of support systems do they have or not have? And third, what is the very real personal and professional impact that these events have on them? You know, one of the most powerful things these nurses do is prepare before anything even happens. They build what the researchers call a mental model. This means before the first cut is even made, they're running through the whole surgery in their head, thinking about what could go wrong and planning for it. It's kind of like a pilot rehearsing their emergency checklist before takeoff. It's all about being ready.
And when things do go sideways, they have to make these unbelievably tough calls on the fly. This quote from the research really says it all. Nurses prioritize life-saving interventions over ensuring sterility. I mean, just think about that. When a life is on the line, they have to make a split-second decision that might go against a core principle of their job. The pressure is just immense.
And these incredibly stressful events, they don't just magically disappear when the crisis is over. The fallout can be serious. In the short term, we see nurses dealing with a loss of confidence, even depression, and just worrying constantly about their careers. And long term, that can turn into losing trust in their own team, or becoming so cautious that it actually affects how everyone works together.
And let's be clear, the things they witness can be the absolute worst-case scenario. One study found that more than a third of these nurses had been through a patient's sudden death right there on the operating table. That is a deeply traumatic event, and it leaves a real mark on their mental and physical health.
Okay, so we see this huge knowledge gap, and we see the very real toll it takes on these nurses. What's the way forward? The good news is, the research doesn't just point out the problem. It actually gives us a pretty clear roadmap for how we can, and really, how we must do better.
And this path forward is super practical. It all starts with training programs that are specifically designed for these emergencies. We're talking advanced, high-pressure simulations that build up not just technical skills, like advanced life support, but also those crucial non-technical skills, like communication and teamwork. And all of this has to happen in a culture that's supportive, where teams can actually talk about what happened and learn from it.
So at the end of the day, why does all this matter so much? I mean, it's not just about the well-being of the nurses, even though that's incredibly important. It actually connects directly to the safety of every single one of us who might one day need surgery. Because when you boil it all down, the logic is simple, and you just can't argue with it. When we give the nurses in that room better training, better resources, and a better support system.
It leads directly to safer surgery for everyone. It's that simple. Giving them the confidence and the skills to handle any crisis is one of the best ways we have to improve patient outcomes across the board.
So, that leaves us with this final thought to chew on. These nurses are the quiet experts, right? The vigilant guardians of that operating room. So the question for all of us, for the hospitals, for the surgeons, and for us as patients, is this: how do we make sure their crucial experiences are finally understood and their voices are always heard?